In Destiny 2 Shadowkeep, we've been given a lot more different ways to make a loadout and be critical about our loadouts, have different decisions, different ways we can build it, and different things we can spec towards. However, there's not a lot of talk right now about how to actually upgrade and work towards a desirable endgame loadout for either PvP or PvE. So in this video, I'm going to be telling you everything I know so far and my guide to working towards an endgame loadout and creating a build in Destiny 2 Shadowkeep. To preface this guide, this is meant to be an endgame guide and requires high light level, and I do recommend endgame activities, and the guide itself is meant to be geared towards both less experienced players approaching the endgame and veterans. I won't be going over how to level or obtain specific weapons or even subclasses or basic things of that nature. Let's start with the absolute basics. What are the elements of a build in Destiny 2 Shadowkeep? Well, we have our subclass, we have our exotic armor, our exotic weapon, other surrounding legendary armor and weapons, and finally armor and weapon mods and mods from the seasonal artifact. I think most people will have their subclasses of choice unlocked, and this is an endgame guide like I mentioned, so I won't be going too in depth on how to level that up or level up to an adequate power level or how to acquire subclasses, but let's start your build there. Next, with your weapons, you'll need to decide on what weapons you'd like to choose, usually utilizing your exotic weapon slot for one of them. With your legendary weapons on them, you can utilize a weapon mod such as Miner Spec or Icarus Grip. To unlock these mods, you can obtain them as drops and from other weapons or from specific sources. For example, a Rampage mod is only obtainable specifically from 801 in the tower. Once you unlock a weapon mod, you'll have it unlocked and it can be reapplied to other weapons as often as you'd like for Glimmer. Of course, there are different factors in choosing what weapons you'll use and what mods on them, depending of course on your teammates, activity, engagements, and even certain traits of exotic weapons. Armor, however, is a bit more complex with the new Armor 2.0 system for Destiny 2 Shadowkeep. Each armor piece has an energy rating that caps out at 10 when fully upgraded. Different armor mods that can be used on armor pieces require a specific amount of energy, and for many mods, the correct corresponding energy type. For example, Unflinching Sniper Aim requires 4 energy, and can only be used on a void energy armor piece, in this case specifically being a chest piece. Some mods, however, are universal that cover a more wide range of weapons at once or are applicable to different things at once and can be used on any energy type, such as precision weapon targeting or boss resist. Armor in Armor 2.0 also has 6 key stats displayed: Intellect, Discipline, Strength, Mobility, Resilience, and Recovery. Intellect is responsible for the passive gain of your super, Strength responsible for the rate at which your melee ability charges, and Discipline for the rate at which your grenade energy charges. Mobility is responsible for your movement speed, not including sprint and jump height, Resilience for your overall health, and Recovery for how quickly you recover after taking damage. Each armor piece will have 6 stats and a level individually of each stat, as well as a listed total of all the stats combined. Obviously, the higher the stat total, the better. On your character screen, it also total up all your armor's levels for each stat and tell you the tier level out of 10 for each stat and the effectiveness of what exactly it's doing. On each armor piece, you'll have 3 main mod slots. The first one is for stat boosts and damage resistance. For example, like a recovery mod that'll boost your recovery stat on that piece of armor, or maybe like a minor resist, which will make you more resistant to minor enemies. The other 2 slots are for more perk related mods, such as unflinching perks, scavenger perks, or reserves perks. And some armor pieces also have an additional slot for activity specific mods, like mods that are only active in the Garden of Salvation raid. When creating an endgame loadout, you'll want to be utilizing as many advantageous, synergistic, or applicable mods as possible for the activity and your overall loadout. Having understood the stat and mod system on Armor 2.0, the main question that now arises is, how do I obtain better stats, and how do I obtain more or better armor mods? Let's start with stats. Every piece of Armor 2.0 drops with a stat package. The lowest I've seen is mid to high 40s, and the highest so far being 65. What is the best, most deterministic way to obtain high stat armor drops though? Simple. Endgame activities. Raids, even older ones, Nightfalls, and other pinnacle activities have a much more likely chance of dropping high stat gear. For example, my chest piece has a 60 base stat total, and I obtained it from the Garden of Salvation raid. Of course, while doing endgame activities and hunting armor, you're going to want to pay attention to the main stats you're looking for and want the highest tier of, as some gear might give you more balanced all-around stats, and others like my chest piece give more of one or a few stats than others. Although endgame pinnacle content like raids and nightfalls are the most reliable source of high stat armor, high stats still have a small chance of dropping on non-pinnacle activity loot. Even something as simple as turning in tokens at a vendor, I've gotten some decently high rolls on some pieces of armor, so watch out for every armor piece. As I mentioned as well, you'll have to keep in mind the energy type of the armor to correspond to the specific mods and weapons you are looking to use, but as a suggestion, the menagerie is actually an old activity that drops usually more average stat packages, but you can actually dictate what energy type it's going to drop with, which is pretty good. Since we now know how to obtain desirable stat rolls on armor and mods to apply to them, we'll have to talk about how to apply mods on armor and utilize them. As I mentioned earlier, each armor has an energy type and a value attached to that, capping out at 10 when fully upgraded. And different mods of course require the different amounts of energy out of the 10 potential points per piece. Most armor drops won't start at too high of an energy value and require you to upgrade them. You can do so by hovering over the energy bar while inspecting armor and using materials to upgrade it. The first 5 energy levels will only require glimmer and legendary shards, however beyond that levels 6 and 7 require enhancement cores in addition, and levels 8 and 9 require enhancement prisms, and to fully upgrade to level 10 requires ascendant shards. With this information comes the next question that arises, which is how do I obtain the materials to upgrade my armor to utilize more or better mods? The first 5 levels only require pretty basic materials, but beyond that requires enhancement cores, prisms, and shards. Enhancement cores can be obtained randomly from dismantling armor or weapons, or as drops from activities, and obtained from completing gunsmith bounties. Endgame materials like enhancement prisms and ascendant shards can be obtained from the gunsmith. Prisms costing 10 enhancement cores and 25 planetary materials and 10k glimmer each, while ascendant shards cost 10 prisms, 100 planetary materials, and 50,000 or 50k glimmer each. There is an alternate way to get these materials though as well, which is through the endgame activity Nightfall the Ordeal at the higher difficulty levels as random drops. I also didn't get an opportunity to mention that the other reason aside from having slots for mods to upgrade your armor is actually when you fully upgrade your armor to level 10 or energy level 10, you get a stat boost across the board, +2 to every category that I spoke about earlier. So if I have a base of 60 total stats, that means when I fully upgrade it, it's going to have 72 because it gets 2 for all 6 categories, equaling a boost of 12. And this is part of the reason why Ascendant Shards are so hard to obtain for that final level. Before we move on to the next section, I thought I'd briefly mention some of the weapon mods that work with different energy types on armor. I personally think that this could use a video of its own, so I won't be going too in depth with all the mods, but I'm just mentioning to give you an idea of what energy armor pieces you'll want to look out for while you're progressing through the game. Pulse rifle, bow, sword, machine gun, and shotgun related perks are found on arc armor. Auto rifle, SMG, fusion rifle, linear fusion, and rocket perks are found on solar armor. Sidearm, hand cannon, scout rifle, grenade launcher, and sniper rifle perks are found on void armor. Now that we have a lot of information that was kind of required or prerequisite to what I'm going to talk about next, let's talk about the gameplay loop, method, and activities on a weekly loop to be working towards improving your endgame build. To recap, in our loadout we need our desired subclass, exotic and legendary armor, which means a high stat total preferably, desired specific stats, and a desired energy type on our armor, exotic weapon, legendary armors with the desired mods that we want, upgrade materials, which means enhancement cores, prisms, and ascendant shards to upgrade our armor, and lastly, which I kind of touched on, armor mods and weapon mods, as well as our seasonal artifact mods. The pinnacle or endgame activities that will allow us to obtain these the most consistently and regularly are of course the raids, including the old ones, so we have Garden of Salvation, Crown of Sorrows, Scourge of the Past, Last Wish, and the Leviathan and its raid layers, Eater of Worlds, and Spire of Stars. Then we also have our pinnacle endgame activities, so the Nightfall, the Ordeal, both the Legend and Master ranks being the most beneficial or applicable to what we're talking about, and I assume Iron Banner as a pinnacle PvP activity when it's on as an event. Raids will be a great source of high stat armor and maybe some specific legendary weapons you might be chasing, with a chance of also getting exotic drops, but on a weekly basis you'll want to do raids mainly to chase your legendary armor with high stat rolls, the desirable stat splits, and the appropriate energy type you're looking for the mods you want to use and weapons you want to use with it. There are 7 raid activities, like I mentioned, that reset weekly, so a lot of potential ways to obtain that high-end gear. However, that leaves out optimizing our exotic armor, which we haven't spoken about yet, but follows the same guidelines as legendary armor, needing good stat splits and a good total stats, as well as desirable energy type for the mods or weapons you want to use with it, and still needs to be upgraded, but actually costs a bit more to do so, but of course uses the same materials we spoke about. So how do we guarantee such a rare drop? Exotics are the rarest drops in the game. How do we guarantee a way to get a good one for our builds that we're going for? Well, this is where Nightfall the Ordeal comes into play. Nightfall the Ordeal rotates its strike each week and has multiple difficulties based on the recommended power levels. Adept is the 750 power level, which has exotic rewards as rare drops, uncommon enhancement cores, and minimal difficulty modifiers without any champions. Hero difficulty is the 920 power level, and it has uncommon exotic rewards, uncommon enhancement cores, rare enhancement prisms, and minimal difficulty modifiers with champions. 950 power level is the legend level, and it has common exotic rewards, uncommon enhancement prisms, more difficulty modifiers, and champions enabled. And lastly, we have the master difficulty at 980 power that offers common exotic rewards, common enhancement prisms, uncommon ascendant shards, plenty of difficulty modifiers, and has plenty of champions. Ordeal Nightfalls are your way to farm for exotics and upgrade materials, and are not limited to once per week rewards, meaning you can do them as frequently as you like to attempt to get the gear that you're looking for your loadout. The higher difficulties are much harder with many more modifiers, but offer more consistent rewards. The Master Nightfalls offer the most consistent and efficient way to obtain all necessary upgrade materials, including Ascendant Shards, and like I said, the most consistent rewards, and I mean consistent, meaning I have yet to not get an exotic armor reward and upgrade materials and more together. And of course, this is at the cost of doing a very high difficulty strike. I've also gotten some of the most powerful mods and enhanced mods, like Enhanced Sniper Rifle and Flinching, from the Master Ordeal Nightfall. I don't have any guaranteed or real way to say where certain mods are unlocked from, but I can bet that some may be locked behind the Master or Legendary difficulties of the Ordeal Nightfall, and may have the best drop rate in the Master Nightfall, things like the enhanced perks or mods that you'd be looking for. Champions are an enemy type in Ordeal Nightfalls that are similar to mini-bosses throughout the strike and deal high damage with pretty high health. There are 3 types of champions, that I know currently at least: Barrier, Overload, and Unstoppable. Barrier and Overload champions, after dealing damage to them, can use a shield that is only susceptible to their corresponding named damage type or weapon with the corresponding damage mod on, and quickly regenerate health while shielded. Barrier champions' shields can only be stopped by weapons with an anti-barrier mod equipped or possess the trait of firing shield-piercing rounds, like the exotic Ariana's Vow. Overload champion shields can only be stopped by weapons with an overload mod equipped, or have the disruption trait, like the exotic Divinity. When the shield of a champion is stopped, they will be stunned and very susceptible. Unstoppable champions are different. They don't have shields but are very, very aggressive. They'll charge at you and hold aggression towards you while being tanky and having high damage output. And the only way to stop or halt their aggression is by staggering them with a weapon with an unstoppable mod, or a weapon that has the trait to stagger enemies, like the exotic Leviathan's Breath. As much as I'd like to go into more detail with Ordeal Nightfalls, I will be saving that for future weekly guides, where I'll break down strategy, builds, team synergy, and rules to complete the master level Nightfall on a weekly basis. The reason I explain the champions and why I think it's necessary though is because this is directly tied to the quality of your rewards from the Ordeal Nightfalls. Champions are not necessary enemies to kill in the Nightfalls, but killing them will grant you different tiers of rewards, which are the rewards I spoke of for each difficulty. Like I said, I've only completed Ordeal Nightfalls when killing every champion in the strike, and I've gotten very, very good rewards, not missing an exotic yet. In addition to that, mods, enhanced mods, as well as upgrade materials and ascendant shards. The champions requiring different traits to be defeated forces you and your team to be critical of your loadouts, so while working towards your better or ideal loadout that you want for your activity, you'll have to be more critical about your loadout for the Ordeal Nightfall, and then critical as you improve it going forward. To summarize and end the guide, whether you're looking to perfect or assemble a top tier PvP build or endgame PvE build, the gameplay activity loop per week looks like completing raids for legendary gear with your desirable attributes or stat splits, creating a loadout suitable for the weekly ordeal Nightfall, forming the Master Nightfall preferably for exotics with desirable attributes, upgrade materials, and top tier enhance mods, upgrading your armor, utilizing mods to improve your build, and enjoying your desired activities where you want to use your build, and repeating that process. So I think Bungie's created a really fantastic, in-depth loot for creating builds, and if you like that kind of gameplay and are passionate about it like I am, this is very, very exciting. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this guide. I'm sorry it was that a bit of a longer video, but there was a lot of information packed into here, and I hope you guys will enjoy my guides going forward for the Master Nightfalls. If you guys would like to see more content from me or like this, you can check me out on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Drewskis. Link is in the description. And thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and as always, I'll see you in the next one. Take care.